Hello YouTube, this is Matt Pullin and it is time for another chess video. For those of you who haven't been reading my user page, my rating last weekend surpassed 2,000 for the very first time. So technically I am now an expert chess player. Also, I won this tournament overall with a score of 3.5 out of 4. So this is one of my games from the tournament. This is my third round game against Steve Szpisjak, and I was white pieces. Steve's rating is 2217. Now, Steve was actually my coach when I was in high school playing for Evanston Township, and his rating was over 2300 at the time. So I actually have a pretty good tournament record against Steve Szpisjak. Counting this game, I have 1 win and 2 draws against him. So d4, I play d4 and he plays d5, and I play the Verisov, and he invites me to take the Caro-Kann with e4, and I say no thanks. Bishop to g5, and now f6, and it's known after bishop h4 that knight h6 equalizes immediately because black is going to play knight f5 and get the bishop pair for nothing. So bishop f4 is a better continuation. This is better than, in my opinion, than the related Trompovsky, because if black ever plays queen b6, white can meet it with rook to b1, protecting the weak b2 pawn. So some other moves were played, which I'm not going to discuss. And now I play queen g4. I had to come up with an idea in this position because my usual plan of playing bishop d3, h4, h5 to attack the light squares is too slow. So I play queen g4 to attack the light square, e6, and also the pawn on g7 if this bishop ever moves. So I attack 2 potentially weak squares, and he defends them with his king. And now it's clear what my plan is. I want to open up the center and attack his king on the e-file, especially the light squares. So bishop d3, some other moves are played. Alright, so I played e4, which is definitely premature. I should castle queenside here, and then continue my space-gaining operations on the king side with h4, h5. White still has an advantage here. Black has not equalized, and the position of the black king is very dangerous. Eventually I should open up the center with e4, but this is too soon. Because e4, the drawback, every chess move has drawbacks, a square that was strong before but now weakened. And in this case, the move e4 weakens the square d4, and he plays queen b6, attacking these 2 points. And there are quite a few ways to react here. This is a critical position. Rybka likes knight g to e2, moving the knight back to e2, so I'm protecting my other knight, so that if queen takes pawn, I can just play rook b1. I think this idea is a little bit too passive. I didn't really consider knight ge2 during the game. The move I played was castle queenside to guard the b-pawn and let him take the d-pawn. And this didn't turn out very well for me. I probably should have taken on d5, which protects the d-pawn and allows him to take the b-pawn. Now, there are a few options here. If e takes, then castles queenside, and I have the plan of doubling rooks on the e-file and trying to attack the black king. This, I think, is clearly better for white. The dangerous move here is queen takes b2. It actually turns out queen takes b2 is bad for black, but, after takes check and the king hides on f8. But this, he's threatening the rook on a1, the knight on c3. And there are 2 reasonable moves for white. Well, actually there's only one reasonable move. The move that Steve suggested to me after the game, king d2, to protect the knight and to connect the rooks and threaten to bring the rook over to b1. But this just loses because of bishop takes, and then he's threatening c2, so I have to take with my king. And now queen takes knight with the idea of winning back the queen with the knight fork. So king d2 is a worthless move here. I should castle if I get to this position, because now a piece can be won. Takes, takes, takes. But now white has this move queen c7, threatening mate on d8, and also to win a piece on b7. So after the knight a6, which is probably forced, queen takes, and now white wins back a piece. So rook b8, takes, takes, and now white is up a pawn, but it's a very dangerous pawn on e6, and the other rook is shut in. So this is definitely good for white. Let's see what's going on here after e takes d5. If queen takes b2, we just saw castles here. So I think the move I suggested for black, knight takes d5. I think this leads to equality, or at least very close to equal. This forces a pair of pieces to come off, because if the white queen moves, then black will just take on b2. So knight takes, and then c takes. Castles, trades bishops, and now I think white should be playing to have f4, f5 in to try to undermine the black pawn center. And white may still have a slight advantage in this position. I think this is the best that black can hope for after e takes d5. Black can play for a minority attack on the queen side and also, bring his rook to the c file and try to get his knight in the game. The drawback for white is that this knight on g3 is not very active. So let's go to castles, the move I played. And now queen takes d4, which he should, and this is just not a good position for white. I underestimated his reply to queen d6. Queen d6 threatens to take the pawn on d5 and then take the bishop on g6, winning his queen. But he moves the queen to b6, and now I take. And then he takes with a c pawn, and I'm not sure why I didn't consider this capture for him. This is very powerful. It forces the queens off the board. So takes, and he has doubled isolated b pawns, and I can use b5 for my pieces. That would ordinarily be enough compensation for being down a pawn, but the real issue here is that black has control over the center. It's very hard, once you've reached this position, for white to undermine the black center. I played f4, threatening f5 to attack this pawn chain, and then he took on d3 and then played rook to d8, so that if I play f5 he can push past with e5, and I don't have enough force to win the pawn on d5. So I play rook d8, so now I really am threatening to push f5, but he just plays g6. And it's going to take me a long time to organize any sort of an f5 break. So this is clearly better for black, and some more moves were played. I should have played a3 to prevent any sort of monkey business on b4, but I didn't. I played knight d4, trying to get my knight to a better square, and this is just terrible. He can't play rook a8 here because knight a3 traps the rook. But instead, he played a better move, because he's a master. He doesn't fall for stuff like that. And I took, and then he gets on the d file, and this is just tons of trouble for me. I'm going to have to undouble his pawns or accept an isolated pawn on d3. So I chose to play c3. I'm just sort of hanging on here, hoping for some chances. I had to take on c6 and now check. And he played rook d1 check, and I have to take it because king c2 check, trades rooks and then takes on g2, and I'm getting my ass kicked. But instead, I took, and then he came behind my pawn, and I guarded it, and this is a very passive position. He plays e4 to stop my king from advancing. And here, he checked me, and I only have one possible move, because if I play king d2, then he plays e3, forking my king and rook. Takes, king e4, and this is an equal position, but black has a crushing king advantage. And this is a very easy position for black to play for a win. I didn't want any part of this. So after this check, I blocked with my rook, and I tried to hold the pawn ending. I should not have been able to do so, but he made some mistakes in this ending due to his very low time. He had less than 5 minutes to think about this position. So he played h5. If he plays c4, I'm busted, because now black has this extra tempo on b6. He can always, whenever all these other moves are used up, he can gain the opposition by advancing the pawn b6, b5. This extra move is a feather in his cap. Meanwhile, I don't have the luxury of advancing my pawn because my pawn on b2 is backward. So c4 is a game winner, but he played h5 instead, and I played king e3. Now, he can probably still play c4 and win, but he played king f5 trying to penetrate, and I have to block with h3, and then he played g5. And this blows his chance for the win. He should have played c4 because now I play c4 myself. And now I have the feather in my cap. I can advance b2 to b3, whereas he's run out of tempi on the queen side. So he played g4, and I play h4 to lock up the king side, and he plays here. Now, it's my move, and if I had to move my king, I would be in serious trouble because he would penetrate to the d4 square. But I played my pawn to b3, and now it's his move. So this is a draw. He plays king f5, and I play king e2. I go straight back, and he plays king e6, hoping for me to make a mistake and play king e3, when he plays king e5, and I have to move my king and allow him this penetration. So instead, I play king f2, and I offer him a draw, which he has to accept because he's lost his winning chances here. So that was my draw against Steve Szpisjak. I will show you my final round game in a future video.